No, it is time though. We may have a couple, but I figured it would be low today because I think we're going to be leaving right when the storm hits. So, talk fast or talk slow, right? One or the other. Well, we are what? Of course, like I said. You're welcome to stay all day, but I'm going to lunch.
Where are we going?
I don't care. Well, let's look at chapter 12, verse 35, as we kind of keep moving toward Jerusalem, as Jesus is getting closer and closer to that final week that obviously we're looking at on Sunday morning. So he just kind of talked about we're citizens of heaven. We're not in heaven yet. We don't need to worry about all our material possessions and greed, and we don't need to worry at all. And so the question then is, okay, how are we to live? What are we to focus on? And the secret word is going to be service in some really kind of unexpected ways. So look at chapter 12, verse 35 to 40, where he tells us to stay alert. Be dressed and ready for service, and keep your lamps burning, like men waiting for their master to return from the wedding banquet. So when he comes and knocks, they can immediately open the door for him. It'll be good for those servants whose master finds them watching when he comes. I tell you the truth. He will dress himself to serve, will have them recline at the table, and will come and wait on them. It'll be good for those servants whose master finds them ready, even if he comes in the second or third watch of the night. So, Jesus is already anticipating his second return. Okay? So he's kind of laid out the idea between his first coming and his second coming. Obviously, we're supposed to focus on the kingdom of heaven, building treasures in heaven, not worrying, trusting him. But he says, in that period of time, however long that is, we need to live by being alert. So the first is, be dressed and ready to go. In other words, be ready. Don't I got to go pick out what I'm going to wear, or I've got to go, right? Be dressed. In other words, you need to be active. There should be no one passive when Christ comes again. Right? It's kind of the idea that be ready for service. The actual phrase here, which some of your translations may say, is gird up your loins. Okay? That's the actual word there, but most people don't know what gird your loins means, right? And we know they wore long robes that if they did any work at all, or if they're going to run, they grabbed it all up, they pulled it all up, and tucked it under the belt to free up their legs to work. And that's what he's saying here. Have your shorts on. Have your work clothes on. Is kind of what he's saying. Have your work clothes on when Jesus comes. In other words, Jesus does not want to catch us in our pajamas, is the idea. We need to be ready. The actual Greek word here is a perfect imperfect verb. So for all you English teachers, that means keep on staying alert. Keep on being dressed. It's the continuing idea. And, some of these things are hard to translate. I mean, the Greek language, goodness gracious, you can conjugate a verb in about 123 different ways. Okay? It's very, very, very expressive. So when we're trying to explain this verb means this, we have to use a bunch of words. And being in the perfect imperative, it's the idea of keep on being dressed. In other words, it's not God's not going to take, I already did that. No. What are you doing now? Jesus doesn't want to hear what we did. He wants to see what we're doing when he comes back. Does that make sense? That's kind of what he's saying here. Then the next word is, keep your lamps burning. No city lights, right? We have light pollution everywhere, don't we? We have light everywhere. You can't even see stars. Where we move from, that's the opposite. I mean, you can go a little bit of ways and there's no city lights, not even miles away. I mean, you could look up and see all the stars. You could see the space station. It's dark. Like my neighborhood that we drove into, there were no street lights. There were no anywhere. Think about it then. There's no street lights. There's no house lights. And so he said, if someone's coming, you need to keep your lamps burning. Don't I hear him at the door. Where's the lamp? Where's the flint or the matches for us, right? I need to get this ready. He's like, no, you need to be ready. When Christ comes again, he expects to find us in this interim period ready for him. In other words, what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing for him? It's kind of the idea here. And so he says, have your lamps burning. In other words, he doesn't want to come on like, oh man, I didn't expect it. And so constant preparation. And then he's like, it's like a third image. So be dressed, lights on, right? Which is, one of the first things we do in the morning, right? Dress, lights on. Third image is be like servants who are waiting on their master to come back from a wedding feast. Now, it's not saying he's the groom, but wedding feasts were a couple days to a week. Okay? They were big deals. So the master's gone. He's at a wedding feast. You don't know when he's going to get back. Because it could be a day or two. It could be a week. But he said, the good servants are ready. The house is clean. Everything's in proper place. There's nothing like, oh, I hear him coming. We've got to run and get this done, right? No, he's like, no. We're already, he said, they're ready. They're waiting for him as if he's going to come any day. And he said, they're eager, they're excited, they have their lamps on, they're ready to go. And then Jesus puts a twist on it, a completely Jesus twist, which he does. So when the master gets there and he finds you that you're dressed, the lights are on, you're ready to go, you're expecting him, everything's in order, you've been busy, everything's been done, and he walks in and he finds that, what does he do, according to the text? He serves you. We don't hear that a lot about Jesus' second coming, do we? The master's going to come now, and he's going to serve you. Because he found you ready, he found you doing stuff, he didn't catch you with the lights off, your pajamas in bed, right? And so then all of a sudden the master switches. In other words, there's going to be a lot of blessings for those, when Jesus returns again, for those who are busy expecting him, right? Who are serving, and he's going to hit that really hard. That he said, he's going to bless us. There's going to be a lot of benefits. He's going to serve us. He said, even if he comes, obviously, it could be in the middle of the night, the second or third watch, which is typically, there's a big debate, is this the Roman watch or the Jewish watch? Anyway, roughly 9 p.m. to 3 a.m., where every human being should be in bed, right? I've been in bed an hour by then, but anyway. I got a text last night at 11:15 from a former friend of mine. And we're in the same time zone. This is not like a California friend who forgot. Anyway. So, thanking us for something that Michelle did. I meant to say, I should have woken her up and said, here, this is your call. But Jesus said, listen, when I come, there's going to be huge blessings. And I'm going to serve my servants, believers who are ready for me to come, who are serving and active and busy and ready, dressed, and he's going to hit that in just a minute. And so the idea is of being being rewarded, right? We're being rewarded. An eternal rewards that Christ is going to give us. You know, serving is an honorable task. Matter of fact, we tend to think Jesus in his first time came to serve, right? And his second time he comes to rule. Well, Luke's saying he's going to serve both times. He came to serve, and when he comes back again, even though he's ruling, he's also going to be serving. We tend to think leadership means people serve me, right? If I'm in charge, then everybody serves me. But Jesus turns it upside down, doesn't he? That the best leaders are those who what? Who serve other people, right? And so he's kind of saying, listen, serving is not a demeaning task. And like it or not, our culture, Jesus' culture, saw serving as a menial, demeaning task. You know, it's better to be served or to serve. Well, the world says it's better to be served. Jesus said it's better to serve. So when he comes the second time, he'll be serving us and rewarding us. How does he do it? Well, I mean, again, that servant leadership model, right? That he's going to come. Anyway, and so the idea is we're no longer, well, we're friends of Christ. Remember Jesus told the disciples, you're no longer slaves, you're my friends. And when you come back, he said, I'm going to treat you that way. And he said, you know what? I'm going to have you all for dinner. It's kind of what he's saying. Almost like we talked about Sunday morning with that last cup. He's like, you know, we're going to have you, and I'm going to serve you. It almost is like what he said. I'm going to go to what? I'm going to go prepare a place for you. If I go to prepare a place for you, I'm going to come get you, take you where I am. So it's the idea of I'm going to serve. Everything I have prepared for you now, you know, is coming. And you're going to be rewarded if you're ready for me. So the idea is stay alert. So he's already hinting what he's going to get at in a minute is that I'm going to come to serve. Therefore, what's the hint we should probably be doing between the first coming and the second coming? Serving. All the way up to the end. Let's look at verse 39. He kind of wraps up this section here. Now it was with stay. We had stay alert. Now it's stay ready. But understand this. If the owner of the house had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would have not let his house be broken into. You also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come in an hour when you do not expect him. So now we had the master-servant image, and now we get the owner-thief image. Okay? In the first one, Jesus is the master, who's right. In the second, Jesus is what? The thief, right? Jesus is the thief in the second image. I know it's disturbing, but hang on. There's a reason. In the first story, the master owns the house. In the second story, the man owns the house, right? And Jesus is the unwanted person who's going to come take from them if they're not ready, is kind of the idea. So if people knew when a thief was going to come, you'd be ready for them, right? Locked and loaded. I mean, you're ready. You're ready. You know when they're coming? They're coming at 10:30. We're ready. We know. They're not getting in here, right? We're ready. But he said, thieves don't come when you expect them. They don't come in any of that at all. And so he goes on and say, this idea of being alert and be ready is important because one thing, you don't know when I'm coming. You have no idea when I'm coming. And anyone who says they know when Jesus is coming is a false teacher, right? Because we don't know. That's been very, very clear. That's why we stay vigilant. So, is Jesus the welcome master who's going to come and serve you, or is Jesus a thief who's going to take from you? Right? If you've not accepted Christ, Jesus at his second coming is a thief, right? He's taking my stuff, he's taking my life, he's going to end, is kind of what he's saying here. The difference is a relationship. The servant and the master have a wonderful relationship. So they're excited that he's coming. And they're going to get benefit when he's coming. The owner and the thief, what kind of relationship do they have? Non-existent. So he's saying, if you have no relationship with me, when I come in my second coming, you're just going to see me as a taker, as a thief. I'm coming as a judge. So it depends on which relationship you have with me. Am I the master? It's great. You're glad to see me. I'm glad to see you. I'm going to bless. Or do you see me as someone who's going to come and take and end your rule of yourself?
That's kind of the way the world works now.
It is.
Boy, all you Christians are doubters. It's no fun.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, absolutely. And the opposite is true. We're a blast. Look around the room. And so, if you reject Jesus, or reject Jesus as Messiah, then his second coming is nothing but loss. There's no benefit to you. Matter of fact, it's horrible. You're going to lose your life. You're going to lose your eternity. You're going to lose everything. And so he's kind of giving that warning, isn't he? He's like, okay, here, it's either a blessing or it's a warning, right? You're going to be blessed or you're going to lose it all. Which is it? What's certain is we don't know when it's going to be. So we don't have time to say, oh, I need to get busy and start serving now because he's coming in a week and a half, right? I need to get out of my pajamas. I need to get busy. He's like, no, you need to be already serving. I'm going to accept Christ before I die. We hear that, right? I'm going to live as I want. I'm going to own my own stuff, and I'll accept Christ. How many of us get to choose when we die? It's not pretty often, is it? And by the way, a lifetime of telling Jesus no, very few people get to the end and change their mind. 30, 40, 50, 80 years of saying no, 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 and now I'm going to have a soft heart. That doesn't really happen much, does it? It does, but it's not, it's kind of rare. And so that's where he's going, and then Peter gets concerned. Okay, there's this blessing here, and then this warning here. So Peter comes in verse 41, and Peter asks, Lord, are you telling this parable to us or everybody else? Who's this apply to? The Lord answered, who then is the faithful and wise manager, whom the master puts in charge of his servants to give them their food allowance at the proper time? It'll be good for that servant whom the master finds doing so when he returns. Now, I tell you the truth, he'll put him in charge of all his possessions. But suppose the servant says to himself, my master's taking a long time in coming. And then he begins to beat the men servants and the maid servants and to eat and drink and get drunk. The master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him and at an hour he's not aware of, and he will cut him to pieces and assign him to a place with the unbelievers. Man, that servant who knows his master's will, and does not get ready or does not do what the master wants will be beaten with many blows. But the one who does not know and does things deserving punishment will be beaten with few blows. From everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded. And from the one who has been entrusted with much, much more will be asked. So Peter again says, who are you talking about, us or them? And Jesus says, let me tell you a story. In other words, I'm not going to make that easy. You need to wrestle with it, right? That's why he told parables. I want you to wrestle with this. I want you to struggle with this yourself just a little bit. So I think Peter was getting a little uncomfortable with the two parables. We got the master, the servant, the thief. Okay, And so Jesus says, listen, there is a blessing and there's a warning here. And I think Peter's like, where are we? And so Jesus said, okay, let me tell you a story. There's this master, okay? And he's gone. And so he puts in charge of his servants someone, and you take care of them, right? You give them the food rations, you minister to them, you serve them, you take care of them, make sure they have food, they have drink, they have jobs, they have clothes. You're responsible for making sure they have everything that they need, is kind of what he's saying here. And then he said, when he comes, what's he going to do? He's going to reward him, isn't he? He said, the servant who served the other servants will be rewarded by the master, which is kind of what he was saying in the first part, right? He said, man, Jesus is probably referring to the honor that he's going to bestow on those who are faithfully served. When he comes and he catches us faithfully serving him, especially by serving each other, Jesus is like, I'm going to reward you. I'm going to reward you, and I'm going to put you in charge even more. Isn't that interesting? That we think that when Jesus rewards us, we have less responsibilities. What does he just say? We have more responsibilities in heaven. More responsibilities is a blessing. For those who are blessed, Jesus says, I'll give you more and greater responsibilities in eternity. Now, if I catch you and you're in your pajamas not doing anything, you're not going to get nearly as much responsibilities to get to do in heaven. You're not going to have as much. You're not going to be able to serve me as much as you could have. So how I find you when I come again, or we go meet him, sets eternity, doesn't it? It's kind of what he's saying here. That we will not spend eternity sitting on a cloud. Right? Or playing golf every day. Or whatever. He said we're going to have meaningful responsibilities in service and some kind of ruling, as he talks about, right? Ruling over angels and all these things. Jesus talked about those things. I don't understand all that. But it's not passive, is it? While we can't fathom this, Jesus 3 times says you're blessed and you will be blessed. Man. So like when I come and you're out there, you're serving, you're working, you're dressed, the lights are on, you're serving each other, you're ministering to one another, you're meeting the needs of the body, and all these things are going on. Whew. Now, if he had stopped here with a story, we would be happy, but he does not. But then he goes on and he says, okay, then we have 3 other groups here. The first is a servant. He's the same guy. He was put in charge of serving all the other servants, making sure they had their food, their allotments, their clothing, their jobs, and everything. And he thought, this guy is taking a long time getting back. So he just spends all his time, his energy, and resources on who? Himself, right? Instead of feeding them, I'll feed myself. I'll eat, drink, be merry. I don't care about them. I'm not going to serve them. I'm going to serve me. I'm going to make sure I have it good. It's taking him a long time. So Jesus says this other servant is doing the opposite. Instead of serving others, he just takes care of his own needs. And so he's like, he beats the men servants, he beats the maid servants, he mistreats people around him, he eats all he wants, he drinks all he wants, he gets drunk, he has parties, he just focuses everything on himself and doesn't even take care of others. And then Jesus in verse 46, which we're going to talk about for a little bit, when the master comes, when he doesn't expect him, at an hour he's not aware of, he's going to do what? Completely dismember him and throw him with the unbelievers. Whew. That's some of the strongest words Jesus has had, isn't it? Some of the strongest of he's had. I catch you.
People say that because of that verse, then you can lose your salvation.
Well, don't get ahead of me. No, you're exactly right. This is a struggle verse on those things. And He's like, this servant is doing exactly opposite of what Jesus expects, right? Opposite. Everything's about himself. Never even takes anything. And so the question is, while it's a good question, what are the options for understanding it? Who is this person, right? And that's one option. One option is, this is a believer, and they've completely apostatized themselves, and they have lost their salvation. Obviously, the Bible teaches that's not possible, right? So that one's not valid. The other option is, and I've got them on your notes there, the other option says that, well, this is a believer, and he just won't be rewarded as much. That really kind of undermines the word dismembered and thrown with the unbelievers, right? I mean, I don't think we can say this is a believer who just kind of doesn't get good, blessed as much, right? Because dismembered and thrown with the unbelievers just kind of rules that one out too. And then there's a couple other options. One is, and I'm going out of order in your notes. One is that this is talking about the nation of Israel, because the word servant is used of the nation of Israel a lot in the Old Testament. So some believe that the servant who's cut into pieces is the nation of Israel, that those in Israel who reject Christ, not those in Israel who reject Christ are then dispersed and scattered all around because they were privileged. They had the scriptures, they had the law, they had that, and they spent it all on themselves and neglected the Gentile that there would be a light to. Okay? The other option, which is probably the one that I lean with the most, says that these are people who were associated with the church, with household of faith. They may even take on responsibilities, right? But their spiritual condition is never told that they ever truly accepted Christ, right? We're never told that they were ever a faithful servant, were we? His parable doesn't say they were faithful and became unfaithful, does he? They were always unfaithful in Jesus' parable. And probably the best example of that would be the one we just talked about a week or two ago on Sunday morning. This would have been Judas, right? Judas had responsibilities, right? He was one of the 12. He understood it. He saw it. Was he ever a true follower of Christ? No, never. Never. And so there are people like that who act like, look like they're going to be right with God, but they've never. He's like, so therefore, if you spend everything God gives you, including your life, on yourself and don't accept Christ, he's like, it's going to be bad. And if you do that in the context of a church and never accept Christ, it's going to be the worst for you. Because we're going to talk about this. Jesus is giving layers of punishment here and layers of blessing, isn't he? He's already said there's layers of blessing in heaven, right? If I come to you and I catch you serving me well, man, I'm going to give you more responsibility. If you're not serving very well, you're not going to have as much responsibility. If you're just sliding through, you may get into heaven, but you're not going to be able, right? So there's layers of appreciation of eternity, isn't there? He said, the more who has the much is expected much. Well, now he's talking about the other way around. If you're this person who should be responsible and you're not, it's bad. So I think this person is someone like a Judas who doesn't lose what he has, doesn't lose his salvation, but you know what? He never had a relationship with to begin with. And in the parable, we're never told he was a faithful servant. He was always unfaithful. So that's the 4 general categories of that happens. But then we have 2 more people. So we have the very, very unfaithful one here, okay? And then we have the servant who knows his master's will, in verse 47, and does not get ready or does not do what his master wants, will be beaten with many blows. So one is going to be dismembered. One's going to be beaten a lot. Okay? And then the next one is what? But the one who does not know and does things deserving punishment will be beaten with what? A few blows. In other words, There's levels of heaven. There's levels of punishment in hell. I mean, heaven's still great, and hell's still horrible, but there's levels, aren't there? And for us as believers, what we do in this life matters for eternity. And I think sometimes we forget that. We think, man, I'm good, I'm saved, I'm getting in. Yeah, but how much do you want to be able to appreciate what you're experiencing? It's kind of what he's saying here. And that's why he comes up with a very, 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 very familiar passage, doesn't he? From everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded. And from him who has been entrusted with much, much more will be asked. We as Christian in the Western Church have more opportunities for service than any people who've ever lived. We have freedom to serve. We have time to serve. We have resources to serve. We have more copies of the Bible than maybe some countries have had. You know? We have opportunities to grow. We have opportunities. I mean, our opportunities to grow, mature, and serve each other are mind-boggling, right? Like I've got some friends who are serving in some very, very dark places of the world secretly, and their ability to minister and serve one another is limited, right? They still serve each other, but it's very, very limited because if they get caught, it's either death or out of the country, right? We don't have those limitations, do we? We really don't. I mean, we can serve as much as we possibly can. And he's like, man, therefore I expect a lot out of you. But I'm going to give you even more. I'm going to give you so much more. Grace does not end accountability. So Jesus said, when I get back, we're going to talk. Man, obviously as Christians, we're not going to be judged for our sin, but we will be judged for our service, right? We'll be looked at. He was like, we'll be rewarded based on how well we used the life God gave us. Were we serving each other? Were we involved? Were we doing all that we could to minister, to serve, each other in the gospel? And he's like, what's cool is anybody can do this. You don't have to have great abilities. You don't have to have great skills. You don't have to have great intellect. Praise the Lord, right? I mean, it doesn't. It's something that we all can do. And he says, I'm looking forward to that. So when I come again, I'm coming. It's going to be exciting. For us, we see him as the master, right? We're excited we're here. We're ready for it. We're ready to go. We're excited. And he's like, good, because when I get here, guess what? I'm going to flip the tables, and I'm going to bless and serve you now. You have served and blessed me. I'm going to now bless and serve you. And I'm going to give you more responsibility in eternity. But for those who reject Christ, he's a thief. He's going to take away everything they've built and strove for. And then he said, we have all these basically different layers here. And he said, then he kind of tells us there's going to be layers, right? There's going to be layers of this, of blessing and even punishment. So we live in a way to honor God. So how do we stay alert and ready? What was my last word? I already forgot. I forgot my last word. Faithful. That's why pastors use alliteration. They can remember them better, right? I'm not good. I don't alliterate. So how do we do that? How do we stay alert, ready, and faithful? Praying? Absolutely. What? Oh, saying the word. You're right. Bible study. Yeah.
What about gathering together?
Gathering together. Meeting each other's needs. Because we can be some pretty needy people, can't we? Right? It's easy to think that life is a gift to spend on ourselves. Right? That's the word. And so we need to get as much out of it for ourselves as we can in a limited time frame. Right? In a very limited time frame. And he's like, no. You're setting the ground for eternity. Focus on eternity. And what you're building for there, remember where your treasure is? That's where your heart is. So he said, this is how we lay treasures in heaven, by meeting the needs and serving the needs of each other in our church body and God's kingdom and all these things, right? I mean, I have never met a church yet that said, man, we don't have any place for anybody to serve. Right? We just don't, I truly like that. I do know some churches like that, but they're declining and dying very quickly. That's why we closed, Southern Baptist alone closed roughly 1,200 churches a year. And we're the lowest of all denominations. We have the lowest number of churches closed, dramatically. That's why we're trying to, people are like, why don't we start new churches? This is why we're starting new churches, right? Just to even keep up. We're not even getting ahead. And so, and why is that? Because they stop serving. They focus on themselves, right? It's easy to see this as this is the place I go to get my needs met. We've heard the old analogy, the church is a hospital for sinners. It is not. It's not. It's a military outpost. We do have an infirmary. We have an infirmary, but we're a military outpost. We're the tip of the spear. It's what we're supposed to be as a church body. And the whole hospital for sinners things is like, I think what you're trying to say is we're a retirement home. We're not. Right? Church is not a retirement home. To have some groups come in and entertain us every Thursday morning. Right? And so the idea is, it changes the way we see that we are accountable to the Lord as return. Now, this is only frightening if you don't know Christ or if you're still in your pajamas. Right? And so he's saying here is, man, there's something that we can do, and these amazing promises. To me, I read this again, and I've read this again, like you all, many times. But the whole idea of Jesus coming to serve us really struck me this time. That really hit me. I really don't. I've never focused on that part of it as much. That I'm serving you now. I'm coming back. I'm going to serve you. I'm going to serve you even more. I'm like, well, no. I thought we just kind of went there and we all just worshipped you. He's like, well, yeah, but I'm going to reward you and bless you for how you met those needs that my kingdom had. And so that's just why we don't. He said don't worry about tomorrow, but that doesn't mean don't think about tomorrow, right? He's like, don't worry about it, but also realize I'm coming, and it's going to be an exciting time. In a very, very, very exciting time. And so Jesus, again, has this idea, seek the kingdom, and then this is where he says, this is how you do it. Be ready for my return. When I come, I'm going to evaluate everybody's life, and it's going to be judging some, blessing some, on different levels, and he's kind of laying this out for them as they're making their way to Jerusalem. It's interesting that he's focused on his second coming here, and he's not even going to the cross yet, has he? But he's laying out the foundation. What does it mean to focus on the kingdom? Right? So, anyway, it was a shorter lesson, so we might beat the rain.